I'm Carly. I've been working as an office clerk at my current company for almost 20 years. Over time, my bosses and colleagues have become like family. We all get along, and I truly believe it's a great place to work. However, as I approach the age of 50, often seen as the midlife mark, I began to wonder if this was the life I wanted for the rest of my days. These thoughts were vague. I didn't have clear goals or ambitions like, I want to do this, or I want to try that. Living with these unresolved feelings, I went about my regular routine. That was until a phone call from my mom back home changed everything. One evening after work and during shopping, my phone buzzed. It was Mom. "Carly, well, your dad hurt his back. He got some patches from the hospital and is resting now, but he can't stand at the shop, so he's taking some time off." Concerned about my immobile dad, I decided to visit my parents the next day. As soon as I entered their house, I heard them arguing. I rushed towards the voices and found my dad trying to prepare some pastries and Mom telling him to stop, worried it might worsen his pain. My parents run a bakery, passed down through generations. I'd never seen my dad take a day off. Dad himself didn't want to take time off for his own reasons, so he forced himself to prepare the cream. Even seeing me, he just grunted a greeting and returned to his work. "Dad, stop it! You've hurt your back. The doctor told you, right? If you push too hard, the pain will last longer. Then, reopening the shop will take even more time. Just rest for now," I exclaimed. But Dad, stubborn as always, didn't listen. However, when he tried to lift a bag containing a kilo of sugar, he cried out in pain and doubled over. Panicking, both Mom and I helped him to his bed. Once there, he admitted, "I thought I was still young, but age catches up. With the new fancy store in the neighborhood taking our customers, maybe it's time to think about closing the shop for good." Our bakery was popular back in the day, but with trendy stores popping up and online shopping being the norm, it's been tough. The younger generation isn't into our traditional treats. The number of customers is decreasing year by year due to this shift away from Western sweets. Still, I love our pastries. Friends, family, and colleagues agree they're delicious. Ideally, I'd want the shop to continue. But without any knowledge about baking and with my parents aging, it would be risky for me to take over. And I couldn't recklessly tell them to keep going. Dad must really want the shop to continue, but at that moment, I felt so powerless. Eventually, Dad's pain lingered for so long that he had to close the shop for about a month. Even when he resumed business, it seemed like he was still in pain as he worked. Seeing this, I wanted to help Dad. After discussing with my husband, Andy, I decided to assist in the family shop during my days off. At first, Andy was supportive, often telling me, "It's okay, go ahead." But as I began spending most of my weekends helping out at my family's place, Andy became resentful. Every time I got ready to leave, he would make snide remarks like, "You value your family more than your own husband," or, "Isn't it too late for that shop anyway? Aren't you just wasting your time?" Initially, I responded with understanding, saying, "I get it, I'm sorry." But as this became a pattern, I began to just leave the house without reacting. In response, Andy started to act childishly by hiding the apron I used at the shop or trying to make me oversleep by turning off my alarm. Watching him play such juvenile pranks with a smirk, my love for Andy dwindled. Then, one day, things took a turn. "Next Monday," began one of my superiors, Alan, "we're having a client meeting at our office. I was thinking of serving desserts from your family shop. Would that be all right? Oh, but isn't the shop still closed? If so, don't worry about it." I readily agreed, immediately went to my family's place and bought the desserts for Alan, who had always been a fan of our products and frequently visited with his family. So to speak, he's a regular customer. So, Alan introduced our delicacies to the clients, hoping they would love them. As I was working, Alan and one of the clients came to see me during lunch break. "This is Carly, the one I told you about from the dessert shop." Alan introduced me out of the blue to the client. Baffled, I met the client, Jude, who began, "Sorry to surprise you. My name's Jude. The dessert I had earlier was so delicious. I had to know where it was from. When I found out it was from your family shop, I felt the need to thank you in person. I heard it's a long-established dessert shop. Is that why the flavor is so profound? It was truly amazing." According to Alan, Jude is a huge fan of desserts and even goes on dessert hopping with her family during weekends. I never expected someone to personally come to thank me. I was overwhelmed and tears welled up in my eyes. Taken aback by my sudden emotional outburst, I explained to the startled Alan and Jude, "I'm sorry, I didn't expect such appreciation. I think Dad would be thrilled to hear this, but I fear this flavor might end with Dad's generation. If you liked it, please visit the shop." Jude, surprised, asked, "Are you closing the shop?" I shared the circumstances at home and my feelings. "If you wish for the shop to continue, why not learn and take over, even if it's now? It's never too late. I have often thought about it myself, but quitting my current job and taking over my family store comes with its risks. And besides, even if I were to take over, I am not confident that the store's sales would recover. I am almost 50 years old, and I don't have the courage to start something new at this age. I don't even know where to begin. It's not just about keeping the store going, and since I have never been involved in the management or confectionery making, I'm anxious about whether I can handle it," I said. Jude thought for a moment before responding. "I hate lies, you know. Your family's confectionery was really delicious. If possible, I would like many people to taste this flavor. But I understand your anxiety. As we age, we become less inclined to take on new challenges. But I believe that it is never too late to start something new. Besides, you were just saying earlier that you wonder if your life is okay as it is now. If you think so, then now is your chance to change your life." Upon hearing that, it was as if a lightning bolt struck my head. While I said that I wanted to change myself, I never took any action and was just wasting time. Of course, taking over the store is by no means an easy task, and it is inevitable that I would cause trouble for both my company and my family. But now that my children are adults and independent, and Andy is working, things might work out after all. "I think you need time to talk with your family, and if you decide on anything, please contact me. I will help you," Jude said as she handed me her business card. It was truly a grateful encounter. That night, I talked to Andy about what happened today and told him that I wanted to explore ways to revive our family's confectionery store. However, he responded with a mocking attitude. "No way, you must be joking. Or are you trying to scam someone? There's no way that old and dirty store will become popular again. Besides, recently you've been helping out as an excuse to neglect household chores. You should just give up and close the store gracefully, and you should just do the housework like you're supposed to," he said, laughing at the serious concerns I had confided in him. You may think that our store is old and about to go out of business, but there are people who like our store's tastes and are willing to support us, so I think there is still a chance. And if I don't do anything now, I will regret it for the rest of my life. I know I'm being selfish, but our children are independent now, and it looks like I'll be able to receive early retirement pay, so I should be able to get by for a while. And when I'm not around, you can just do the housework," I said. Andy's face clearly showed his displeasure as he said, "Huh? I married you because you could handle both work and housework, and now you're suddenly quitting your job to take over the store and neglecting housework? That's a breach of contract. And besides, if it were a young and beautiful female president, it would be newsworthy, but a nearly 50-year-old woman standing in the store won't work. Men all want to buy from young and beautiful women. I don't have any emotional attachment to the store, so I just wish it would go out of business already. Confectionery is outdated in this day and age anyway. Well, if you still want to take over the store after all I've said, then get a divorce first. I can't watch if you make a big mistake and end up in debt. Andy was all puffed up and acting arrogant. I figured he probably didn't really want a divorce. He must have thought I'd give in if he just mentioned it, but when I said, "All right, bring the divorce papers then," he looked shocked, even though he was the one who brought it up. Of course, I had my doubts and fears, but after much thought, I was determined to take over the shop. And yet, right from the start, he shot that idea down, made fun of it, and in the end, hinted at divorce just to get his way. Such a narrow-minded man, no thanks from me. Later on, he embarrassingly yelled, "You know what divorce means, right?" I calmly replied, "You were the one who suggested it after thinking it through, right? I've thought about it and I'm fine with it. Bring the papers." Seeing the hit to his pride, Andy's face turned beet red. The next week, he really did bring the divorce papers, shoving them in front of me. "If you sign this, we're strangers. Are you sure about this?" I had made up my mind. Silently, I took the papers and signed my name. Perhaps he expected me to hesitate because he looked completely stunned. "Yes, we are now strangers. I'll submit these. Let's discuss the details through our lawyers," I said, grabbing my packed bags and leaving the house. I went straight to my parents' house and explained the divorce and its circumstances. They were both shocked and a bit angry. I think our marriage was doomed from the start with a man who, instead of being supportive, opposed everything and badmouthed me and my family. It was bound to break down. It might be late, but I still love the taste of our shop and want to continue it. I will study hard, so please let me join the business, I pleaded. Eventually, my parents agreed. Soon after, I filed the divorce papers. We divorced without any division of property or compensation. Until the end, Andy warned, "You'll regret this." But I simply replied, "If I regret it, it's none of your business." And we parted ways. Juggling work and the family business was challenging for me, from developing new products, introducing machines, managing costs, promotions, and various other tasks. There were moments I felt overwhelmed, but each time, Jude was there to help and support, introducing me to various business contacts, helping me stay afloat. Trying to increase our online presence through social media was tough since neither my parents nor I were familiar with it. But after months of consistent posting with the help of my daughter Layla, who is an expert in social media, we began to see an increase in likes. Still, Layla wasn't satisfied. She said we needed to go viral. When I asked her what that meant, she explained it's when something becomes a hot topic on social media. Wondering what could possibly make us go viral, I tried sharing our daily life, like preparing pastries and uploading videos of Mom reviewing them. While we did get likes, we were far from going viral, and I realized how hard it is to suddenly become a sensation. One day, while I was busy with office work, I got a call from Layla. I called her back during my break, and an excited Layla said, "Hey, Mom, the video of Grandpa the other day went super viral." Confused, I asked, "What do you mean?" It turns out a video of Dad interacting with a neighborhood dog was getting a lot of attention. People found the interaction between grandfather and the dog endearing, saying not only was the dog cute, but the joyful grandfather was even cuter. I never imagined he'd become famous this way, but thanks to that video, we started to attract younger customers, and Layla, sensing an opportunity, uploaded a short video of her dancing with Dad, which also became a hit. Our shop became more famous for Dad than our pastries, and we started to see customers occasionally asking for a photo with him. Later, we introduced adorable pastries themed around animals and plants, seasonal limited edition pastries, and even low-sugar options for health-conscious folks. As a result, our sales gradually but surely increased. When business started to pick up, I left my office job to focus solely on the bakery, actively participating in its management and pastry making. While I couldn't match the expertise of my skilled parents, I was genuinely happy to work alongside them in the shop. We also started mail order service, leading to orders from distant places. During busy times, even my children would help out, and our business quickly grew. Dad, initially resistant to new things, was overjoyed by the result. "The last time the shop was this lively was when my own father was still alive. Carly, Layla, thank you so much. We're truly blessed to have such wonderful daughters and grandchildren," he said, bringing me to the brink of tears. After that, a local TV station found us through social media and offered to do a feature on us. We were also featured in a popular national magazine as the shop to watch. As a result, more and more customers started coming in, and just when things were starting to pick up, an incident occurred. It happened when I was tidying up the store to get ready for closing. About 15 minutes before closing time, a man rushed in shouting, "Is Carly here?" That voice sounded familiar. I thought, could it be? And braced myself, only to see Andy saying, "Carly, how have you been? Saw you on TV the other day. Seems like you're making good money now. Man, I'm so proud." "What do you want?" I responded coldly, feeling uneasy. Andy then tried to lighten the mood. "You still mad about what I said back then? It was just a joke, right? But okay, I admit, I said it wrong. How about we forget about it and start over? I'll be your successor and help with the business. Sounds good?" I refused immediately, shocked at his proposal. "What are you talking about? Why would I ever want that? You hurt me deeply back then, when I was truly struggling, and even suggested divorce. I'd never marry someone as petty as you, not even for all the money in the world. You said I'd regret my decision, but I don't. In fact, I'm better off without you. Plus, taking credit for your ex-wife's success is just pathetic. Let me make this clear. There's no way we're getting back together, and absolutely no chance. Now get out and never show your face in my shop again," I shouted, chasing him out with the broom. Andy, clearly not expecting to be thrown out, left yelling, "You'll regret this!" A few days after Andy's visit, there was an increase in false comments on our shop's social media. Accusations like, "This place used expired ingredients in their cakes," and "Their kitchen is filthy and infested with cockroaches. They serve desserts made in such conditions." Layla would always refute these claims, but then they'd quote her and make even nastier comments. Despite reporting these accounts, they'd come back using different profiles. Eventually, I decided to consult a lawyer. After some digging, we identified the culprit behind the false claims. As you might have guessed, it was Andy. Through our lawyer, we informed Andy that we were aware of his actions. We warned him that any further slander would result in legal action. Subsequently, Andy deleted all his social media accounts and stopped making any comments. You'd think that was the end of it, but there was more to come. Though Andy stopped making negative comments on our shop's SNS, he apparently created fake accounts to continue his vendetta. Layla discovered this and showed it to me. Do you think this could be Dad? That's how we found out. There were posts bad-mouthing someone without naming names, but clearly referring to me. Among those posts was a melodramatic one saying, "Where did I go wrong in life?" It gave me the chills to think that a man nearing 60 would do something so petty. Layla captured screenshots of Andy's social media account and shared them. She then explained the baseless claims made by the individual, and our loyal customers rallied behind us. Making unfounded claims about unsanitary practices won't gain anyone's trust. After a while, Andy's fake account faced a social media backlash, and in panic, Andy deleted that account. However, someone managed to extract personal information from Andy's social media account, and astonishingly, the phone number of the company where Andy worked leaked out. The company then started receiving silent calls and prank calls making fun of Andy. Naturally, the company got wind of how this all started. While younger employees who use social media were buzzing about it, the senior executives, angry about the company being identified, were quite stern with Andy. Even if Andy wanted to switch jobs, it would be tough due to his age, and now he's treated like a pariah by his colleagues. You may wonder how I know all this. Well, a few days ago, Andy called me crying, shared the details, and in his usual self-centered manner, asked me to help him save face. Honestly, I keep regretting why I ever fell in love and married such a man. Of course, I declined all of Andy's requests and blocked his number. Now, What design should I go with for the new product? I pondered, trying to put thoughts of Andy behind me.
My name is Shanna. I live in a suburban house with my 4-year-old son Jeremiah and my husband Darwin, who I've been married to for 6 years. We both share the housework and the childcare, and I work hard every day. I'm blessed with a gentle and well-behaved son and a supportive husband who understands my work life. Jeremiah was able to enter kindergarten safely, and he seems happy every day. Life is mostly smooth sailing, but there's one concern. There's a conspicuous person among the kindergarten parents who acts like the leader of the moms. I noticed her about a month after enrolling my son in kindergarten. It was when I went to pick up my son in the car. That kid's mom, don't you think she's kind of lame? Really, I know, right? I know, she seems so old ladyish. Don't you think she should pay more attention to her clothing? I was waiting near the gate for my son to come out, and these women happened to be nearby. At first, I thought I misheard, but they were gossiping about one of the parents. The central mom was speaking, and her entourage of moms were giggling. Really, it's clear life is over when you give up being a woman. Yeah, just like Jody says. The central mom's name seemed to be Jody. Since my husband and I took turns picking up, I didn't know about her existence until then. Ordinarily, I wouldn't want to get involved with people like these, but at that moment I was too rash. Excuse me, but you really should stop talking like that. I spoke up just as I would if talking to a child. Suddenly, the air froze, and the central mom's face tightened and her entourage turned pale. My son came running to me just as the central mom's trembling lips were about to retort. "Mommy, today was fun again!" Glancing at her son, who had jumped over, the woman left. At the time, I only thought, this might be a bit awkward. But the incident happened just the next day. Worse yet, from that day on, I had been in charge of my son's kindergarten activities for a while. It'll be tough, but I think he'll get over it in a month or so. Nah, I think it'll be fine if I manage my time well. I've already talked to everyone at work, and I'll figure it out. Luckily, my job is flexible enough to adjust to my convenience. I specify the schedule to my colleagues for when I'll be away, then hurriedly leave the office. Driving into the kindergarten, I felt a bad vibe the moment I stepped into the parking lot. What? I feel like the other moms are looking at me and talking about something. When I look at them, they quickly look away. I was clearly being excluded. Oh wow, it's been a while since I've felt like this. As I approached the moms who were whispering, they scatter like a retreating tide. I almost laughed, but I held it in and decided to wait by the wall for my son. That's Jeremiah's mom, apparently. She's rather flashy. Quite sharp looking, isn't she? In hushed tones, their voices reach me from a distance. It's hard not to notice them, even though I'm not sure if they're talking about me or not. What? She's just dressed up all flashy, that's all. The voice was so loud, I inadvertently looked sideways only to meet eyes with Jody, who was heavily made up. I thought, who are you to talk? But I didn't say it out loud. She flashed a smirking smile as I kept looking. Oh dear, I'm sorry. Did you hear that? Her followers chuckled at that remark. The other moms, watching from afar, became a bit noisy at the unusual atmosphere. I was unsure how to respond, but thinking that backing down would have repercussions later, I boldly stared back at Jody. No, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you at all because your voice was so soft. Could you say that again, please? Just as I thought, when I glared back strongly, Jody's face twitched. People who lord over a group and bully those beneath them are surprisingly weak when confronted. But at that moment, she was unexpectedly shrewd. Uh-oh, this is bad. What should I do? Isn't it scary? I wonder if I made her mad. She momentarily backed off, then launched a strategy to paint me as the aggressor. Her followers seemed to catch on, turning their backs on me and whispering. Just as I was about to retort again, Jody's child came running. Come on, let's go. There's someone scary here. When Jody gave the order, her followers started getting into the car. As I watched them, feeling frustrated, one of Jody's followers tripped and spilled the contents of her bag. Oh! With a clatter, various small items scattered within a 6-foot radius. But none of Jody's group offered to help, and they all got into the car. With no other choice, I rushed over to help. I bent down to pick up the small items and park diary, etc. Are you okay? Oh, I'm sorry. Hey, hurry up and get in. Jody hurried her from the open passenger window. Then, sensing her mother's impatience, the girl next to her started to cry. Oh, I'm sorry, don't cry. Hey, is that notebook that flew over there yours too? Yes, it is. I'm sorry. I went to pick up the notebook that had flown the farthest and brushed off the gravel. Then Jody, who'd been anxiously tapping on the car, let out a big sigh. Ugh, that's enough. Don't talk to me ever again. What? The window whined as it closed. The girl knelt down on the ground in shock, and the car drove off, leaving a cloud of dust. Here, is this everything? Wait, what? As I was puzzled by the girl's sobbing, my son conveniently returned. I asked my son to play with her daughter so that I could chat with her for a bit. Need a tissue? Absolutely. Thank you. From afar, I handed her a tissue as I watched the children play tag in the park square. Somehow, we got into introductions, and I found out her daughter was in the same class as Jeremiah. I was reminded of my own lack of sociability. I also found out her name was Leticia for the first time then. I'm hopeless. I've always just gone with the flow. No, that's fine. More importantly, I had noticed something interesting among the items that had spilled from her bag earlier, a limited edition cosmetic known to those in the know. Do you like cosmetics? When I asked, Leticia's face lit up. Looking closer, I saw that she was indeed wearing makeup. Her technique was a drastic contrast to Jody's. Yes! Oh, sorry, I bought this because it was recommended on an app I've been using. Saying this, Leticia showed me her mobile phone. The logo displayed was very familiar. It was an app released by my company. I was hesitant to tell her when she said, "But I heard this is an app from Mr. McLaren's company. I like it because it has good taste, but I might have to delete it now." What? McLaren is Jody's last name, but there's no one with the last name McLaren among our employees. Do you like cosmetics too, Jeremiah's mom? Just call me Shanna. Yeah, I absolutely love them. Although I had many questions about Jody, I ended up chatting with Leticia for quite some time, and the children were left to their own devices. Before I knew it, 30 minutes had passed, and I ended up giving her a ride in my car. It was the first time I'd had someone I could call a mom friend, and it was so enjoyable to talk naturally. I must have been smiling unconsciously after I got home because my husband laughed at me. "It seems like you had fun." "Oh, that's true. I made a new parent friend today." I told my husband about the events of the day. He was all smiles while hearing about Leticia, but his expression clouded a bit when the conversation shifted to Jody. He seemed to know about her too, and shared various rumors. Things like she's forced jobs related to school events on mothers who hated them, or harsh words have made her feared by everyone. Apparently, she had once ostracized a mother, isolating her child in school, which eventually led the mother and child to transfer schools. "I think you'll be fine since you're strong, but you might want to limit your interactions with her. I heard there's a rumor that she's had children excluded before." "Really? Okay, thank you." I was curious about my husband's words, but I wasn't giving it much thought at the moment. After all, I won't be dealing with her my whole life, and she's not a business associate either. However, the situation had turned into something that I couldn't simply dismiss. A while after becoming good friends with Leticia's family, Jody, for some reason, started talking to me. We hadn't even made eye contact since that day. "I heard about you." What could she be talking about, coming all the way to the parking lot to talk to me? As I wondered what she had heard about me, Jody smiled smugly. "You're the president of some company, aren't you? No wonder you drive such a flashy car." Huh. I wondered who had given her that information. By saying some company, she might not know exactly what kind of company I'm running. When I got out of the car, I was quickly surrounded by Jody and her entourage. With her arms folded, Jody gestured to me. "What do you want?" "You. I'll let you into my group. Let's be friends from now on." I never said I wanted to join her group. Though I thought that, I remembered my husband's words at that moment. If I was the only one being ostracized, I could endure it, but if something harmful happened to Jeremiah, I would never forgive myself. Maybe I should just endure it here and go along with the conversation. Thinking that, I casually responded, "Oh, thank you. I'm glad." I didn't put any emotion into it. But Jody seemed quite pleased with my words. She promised to have lunch with me tomorrow and left in a good mood, leading her entourage. What was that all about? The thought of having lunch with them already made me feel dejected. At that moment, I suddenly felt someone's gaze. Turning around, I saw Leticia spying on me from afar. Since that day, she had been ostracized from the group. "Leticia, what are you doing hiding over there?" I'm sorry, Shanna, I... According to her, Jody had suddenly called her last night and thoroughly questioned her about me. She had accidentally let slip that I was a company president. I'm sorry. Maybe she's planning to take advantage of you." Apparently, Jody has a habit of making the weakest member of the group pay for all the lunches and parties. And until now, that person had been Leticia. What's that about? I once thought it was best to maintain a healthy distance with Jody, but I couldn't tolerate her treating Leticia, such a kind person, so horribly. I decided to change my strategy. We'll be part of this kindergarten for another 3 years. If we have another child, it'll be even longer. Jody's family seems to have many children, and if I'm going to be involved with them for so long, it might be easier to take a stand right now. I was invited to that group, I said. Despair washed over Leticia's face, and she almost started crying. Then we can't talk anymore, can we? Apparently, Jody has forbidden the group's members from talking to any mothers she's ostracized. I'm amazed at how tyrannical she is. No way, that's not true at all. I just wanted to surprise everyone. I really think this isn't good. The next day, the cafe where I was invited for lunch was very close to my office. Jody was at the center, taking over the terrace seating. You know, you look very flashy, don't you? In a good way, of course. So with that and being a CEO, you must be incredible. You must be working hard and earning good money, right? I was bothered by the occasional condescending tone, but that wasn't what I wanted to hear about today. Speaking of which, that app is popular these days. From outside the cafe, I could see a large billboard at the top of a building advertising our company's app. The reason I brought up this topic was, yes, it's popular now. Actually, my husband works for that company. Oh, really? He just changed jobs. He was scouted with attractive terms and was poached. You should come to the job change celebration. Just as I thought, she took the bait. However, there were several inaccuracies in what she said. To be precise, her husband isn't working there yet. They've only offered him the job, and his first day in the office isn't until next week. Besides, he wasn't headhunted or anything. He just applied on his own accord. They probably think I know nothing about it, but unfortunately for them, I'm the most knowledgeable person in the whole world about that company. Oh, I'm sorry. I have to go now. Oh my, you sure are busy as a CEO, huh? Take care. Confused by what was just said, I tilt my head and Jody smiles in disbelief. You know, you may be the CEO, but you're still the newest member here, right? That's why I'm saying you should pick up the check. It seemed that Leticia's concerns were right on the money. In the end, they probably just saw me as someone to pay the bill. The conversation was filled with nasty gossip, and I felt nothing but disgust at the malicious attacks on Leticia. I forced a smile, paid the bill, and left. Everything is in place now. All that's left is to deliver the punch. On the night of Jody's husband's job transfer celebration, I approached him. Mr. McLaren, you're working late on your first day. Boss, I'm sorry, just a little longer. I want to learn the job quickly. Today was Mr. McLaren's first day of work. He was a bit cautious, but just as I felt during the interview, he was a completely ordinary person. How about we go out for drinks to welcome you on your first day? I'll invite the others too. No, I really want to go, but my wife has booked dinner to celebrate my job change. I'm sorry, can we do it next week? I knew he wouldn't come. Besides, I knew his wife had reserved a table at a fancy steakhouse because, coincidentally, I was invited there too. I left the office, picked up Leticia in my car, and headed to the restaurant. You took your time, didn't you? It's already started. Oh my! The star of the show was supposed to be her husband, but the party had already started when I entered the restaurant. Jody's eyes turned to Leticia, and she makes an obviously disgusted face. What a sourpuss! You weren't supposed to be invited, were you? Well... Oh, I just ran into her and invited her. I'm sorry, could you please order a drink? Jody and her entourage have taken over the table seats, and Leticia and I sit at a separate table for two. Jody completely turns her back on us, engrossed in conversation. Would I have been sitting in the corner all alone if I hadn't brought Leticia? Well, it doesn't matter. Oh, right. After talking to Leticia for about 30 minutes, Jody looks back as if she just remembered. A spiteful smile, clearly looking down on us. Here, you'll handle the bill, boss. Her entourage chuckles. I laughed too. It was such a predictable turn of events. Yes, that's fine. You're part of the group now, so it's only natural. Oh, that person will be showing up soon too. At that moment, I stood up. When I went down the hallway leading to the bathroom and eavesdropped, I heard that Jody's husband had just entered the restaurant. Wow, everyone. I'm sorry to keep you waiting. Everyone wants to celebrate you. I'm proud that you joined that company. Everyone has downloaded the app, although they seem to have been eating and drinking quite a bit, sidelining the main person. But I thought, thanks for downloading the app. But is this place okay? It looks really expensive. Oh, don't worry about it. The new mom will pay for everything. Being rich is nice, isn't it? The crowd around burst into laughter. Then, without waiting for me to come back, I heard a toast being raised. I sighed and snuck back to my seat at the edge of the room. It was a coincidence, but my seat was behind Mr. McLaren, and in just the right position so he couldn't see me. "But you know what I think? Men and women really should have separate roles, I believe," she said loud enough for me to hear. This was one of Jody's favorite topics. "You see, if a mom's not at home, the kids are going to suffer, right? Plus, I don't think women can do a good job in the workplace." "Hey, now don't say that. My current boss is a woman, you know." "That's my point. I'm sure you'd do a better job if you were the boss." That was the last straw for me. I couldn't help but let out a laugh, and Jody glared at me. "What are you laughing at? It's the truth. I don't know what kind of company you run, but that should be left to men." "What?" "No, I'm sorry, but the app my company created seems to be used by all of you, and it's doing great, so don't worry." Saying that, Jody's face twisted, not understanding. Mr. McLaren turned to look at my face and went pale. "What nonsense are you talking about?" "That's enough. I'm disgusted. Just leave the money and go." "Hey, you, what are you saying to the boss?" "Good work today, Mr. McLaren. Congratulations on the new job." He noticed my empty glass, and Mr. McLaren hurriedly brought a beer bottle. As I was refusing it, I could see Jody's face getting more and more twisted, unable to catch up with the situation. Her followers were also confused and murmuring. Mr. McLaren apologized with such force it looked like he was about to put his head to the floor. "Ma'am President, my wife has been quite rude this time. I must apologize." "No way. This is just unacceptable. Looks like Mr. McLaren will have to be fired." "Just kidding." As I joked like that, McLaren clung to me and apologized. I quickly apologized back to lighten the mood, knowing that this would leave nothing but a feeling of harassment. "David's mom, you'll still be friends with us, right? You're not really going to fire my husband, are you?" Jody, with a completely fawning smile, buttered me up. Her family has many children, so losing her husband's job would be a problem now. I won't fire him, though. "No, my child, Jeremiah, was not interested in me at all, was he?" "Ugh, so sorry. Move, you're in the way, Leticia." Jody trying to push Leticia away, who was standing next to me. What a distasteful person. "Come on, leave this mediocre woman behind. You'll still be friends with me, right?" "No, the mediocre one is you. Leticia is my dear friend. She's a far better person than you." "What?" Jody's voice rose, and she went into a wild rage. I apologized to the restaurant owner and paid for everyone's bill. "Mr. McLaren, we're counting on you, starting next week." I said that to Mr. McLaren, who was desperately calming his wife, and we left the restaurant. Later, Leticia and I had a modest celebration. After that, Jody's group fell apart. None of her followers wanted to continue associating with Jody after witnessing her behavior that night. She began to avoid me and gradually lost her place in social circles. A month later, her entire demeanor had changed and she became quite subdued. She tried and failed to join other mom groups, but that's none of my business. Leticia and I continued our friendship, and we still visit each other with our families on holidays. McLaren and I have a business relationship, so personal matters don't come into play. Seeing how hard he works, I can't help but think the incident that night might have spurred him on. In any case, I believe that taking a strong stance from the beginning paid off. Perhaps in human relationships, taking the initiative is key to victory. "I don't remember inviting you." "Ah, she must be talking about her bragging party today, showing off her fancy high-rise apartment to everyone. Well, I don't remember being invited either, and I certainly had no desire to go." But she continued to confront me. "Did you come for a tour or something? You, who can only afford such cheap and unimpressive clothes for your own daughter?" She smirked, looking down on me. Hearing this, I decided to fight back. "Is there a reason I shouldn't be here?" "Yes, this is no place for someone as poor as you." With one sentence, I stopped Jasmine in her tracks. As my words sunk in, her face turned ashen, then quickly flushed with anger. She couldn't believe what I had said and called me a lying bastard, which was rather amusing. "My name is Alan, and I'm a homemaker." I did want to work, but at my husband's request, I decided to focus on our home. But every day is filled with joy as I work hard for my family. My loving husband, our dear daughter, and I lead a life full of love and dedication. This story took place a few years after my daughter was born. She had grown up, and it was time for her to attend preschool. Among several options, my husband and I chose the preschool where we believed our daughter could grow freely. At first, she was a little nervous, but she soon made many friends and enjoyed her days at preschool. I also made new friends, other moms, thanks to our children's friendships. But not all of these connections were pleasant. While most of them were kind, there were a few who always tried to one-up everyone else. The leader of this pack was Jasmine. According to other parents, Jasmine was a homemaker too, but her husband worked at a famous company. She seemed to brag a lot about being the wife of an employee at such a notable firm. Her stories were always about luxurious hotels, trips abroad, or buying designer items. Just recently, I had to listen to her boast about her lunch at a renowned chef's restaurant. While Jasmine seemed to have a few friends among the moms, I didn't want much to do with her. But it seems like we can't always choose who we encounter. On holiday, I took my daughter to the park and unexpectedly ran into Jasmine. "Oh, hello there," she approached me. Jasmine was dressed in an elegant, tight dress with delicate, strappy mules. Everything about her screamed expensive. It was all so outstandingly flashy and beautiful. Not exactly the outfit one would expect for a park outing with a child. "Hello," I managed to respond, doing my best to hide my discomfort. She then erased her expression and stared at me. I was puzzled, wondering if I'd done something wrong. But then I realized her gaze was focused on my daughter standing next to me. Upon seeing my daughter, Jasmine chuckled in a derisive manner, looking at me with a smirk, and then she turns to me with the smirk. "Hey, where do you buy your daughter's clothes?" I wonder why she's asking. Her next line answers my question quickly. "Those clothes look quite cheap. Don't you feel bad for your daughter?" Indeed, my daughter was wearing a simple t-shirt and skinny jeans that you could find anywhere. But it's not ragged, and I never really paid it any mind, so I just chuckled and let it slide. It seems like any response I give would just invite a counter-argument, so saying anything now would only lead to a headache. Better to avoid unnecessary confrontation. Seeing my forced smile, Jasmine apparently assumed she'd hit a nerve. With a triumphant look, she said, "If you can't afford anything better, let me know. I can give you some of my kids' old clothes. They're second-hand, though. If you want, I can even give you some of my clothes." I had no particular desire to accept her offer, so I responded vaguely with, "Sure, I'll keep that in mind if I ever need to." By this time, our kids were engrossed in different play equipment, so I was eager to end the conversation. "My daughter seems to want to play somewhere else, so I have to go," I told her. "Well, if you ever need help with clothes, don't hesitate to tell me." She waved flamboyantly, and we parted ways. Seeing my daughter's cheerful smile ahead of me, my irritation subsided. One day I heard Jasmine was inviting some close mom friends over to a party at her house. Apparently, she'd bought a newly built high-rise apartment with her husband's money. She probably planned to show off the apartment during her home party. I was not invited, but I had no interest in a party thrown by Jasmine and figured it would just be an opportunity for her to boast, so I didn't care. Rumor has it that there was a dress code for the dinner party. Apparently, the guests were instructed to wear ostentatious, brightly colored, and beautiful dresses, which aren't usually required at a casual home party. I also heard that moms from relatively affluent families were invited. Sure enough, looking at the guest list, there were moms with husbands working at global companies or whose families owned large pieces of land. The dress code was probably there to filter the guests. Realizing again that Jasmine judges people by their wealth, I was fed up just hearing about it. I genuinely considered how to avoid her as much as possible in the future. But as long as our kids were at the same preschool, that seemed unlikely. I hoped we'd never meet again privately, but after the recent incident at the park, I realized that we live in the same area and that it would be difficult. I wished that this problem would disappear completely someday. I even wished on a star. On another day, I found myself heading towards a high-rise apartment. I opened the automatic lock at the entrance, walked inside the building, and looked around the floor. Just then, a door creaked open. Surprisingly, the person who appeared was the haughty guardian, Jasmine. I was taken aback and stood frozen for a moment, but soon I regained my composure. "Well, hello there." No matter how much I disliked her, I figured I should at least say hello. However, Jasmine didn't respond, instead staring at me with wide eyes. We exchanged glances for a while until Jasmine furrowed her brows, a clear sign of her unhidden anger, and addressed me. "I don't remember inviting you." Ah, she's referring to today's party. I don't recall being invited either, nor did I want to attend. "Well, I wasn't invited," I responded matter-of-factly. Apparently, she didn't appreciate my response. Jasmine continued to confront me. "Why are you here if you weren't invited?" "Why am I here, you ask? Did you come here to tour this high-rise apartment, even though you can only afford to dress your daughter in such drab and lowly clothing?" She snickered at me with disdain. Hearing that, I thought, now is the perfect moment to counter Jasmine. I carefully chose my words to throw at her. "Do you think I shouldn't be here?" "Yes, this is not a place for someone like you." "Why is that?" "Because for someone poor like you, well, this is actually my home." As my words overlapped with Jasmine's, her movements came to a complete halt. Her face turned pale when she realized what I had said. She probably hadn't expected that response at all. Her eyes were black and white, as if she didn't understand. She blinked in disbelief, trying to digest the situation. Instantly, Jasmine's face turned red with anger. "What do you mean? Explain yourself." "Let me clarify for you then. Actually, my husband is the president of several companies. They may not be famous companies, but thanks to the income generated from these businesses, we earn significantly more than the average person. He owns several properties across Japan, and the new high-rise apartment building where we are now is built on one of his properties. So this apartment building is owned by my husband, which means it's our home. I regularly visit this high-rise apartment because my husband entrusted its management to me. He understood that I wanted to work, so he gave me this job." I explained the situation to her in a nutshell. Upon hearing this, Jasmine raised her eyebrows and shouted, "What? I didn't know about this! When I signed the contract for the apartment, I didn't meet you. I met a man who was the manager." "Oh, that must have been my husband. He took over for me this time for the key handover, so I didn't get a chance to meet you." "You can tell as many lies as you want." With that parting shot, she went back into her home. To my surprise, Jasmine returned to the entrance. She seemed to have gathered an assortment of things from her home, children's toys, stuffed animals, stationery, clothes, all jumbled up in her arms. "You're the one dressing your kid in such pitiful clothes. Stop lying." With that, Jasmine started throwing the items she was holding at me. "There's no way you earn more than me." Jasmine's sudden outburst caught me by surprise, but her rage seemed to be running unchecked. Before I had a chance to react, the object she'd thrown whizzed past me. The sound of it hitting the floor echoed hollowly, a reminder of her uncontrolled anger. I decided then that it was high time to set the record straight about the park incident as well. About my daughter's clothes that day. "What? Do you remember the day we were at the park?" "What does that have to do with anything?" "My daughter loves playing in the sand. I figured she'd get dirty anyway, so I dressed her in clothes that could handle a little grime." "That's a lie." "It's the truth. Here, look." I pulled out my phone and showed her a photo from my album. Jasmine froze as she looked at the picture. In it, our family of 3 was all smiles, with my daughter wearing a recognizable children's brand outfit in the center. Jasmine's eyes widened even further in surprise as she took it in. "You only dressed her nicely that one time, didn't you?" she screeched, clinging to her last shred of denial. "That's not true. Here, look at all these," I countered, showing her multiple photos. Sure enough, my daughter was seen wearing nice clothes in beautiful settings and more casual wear where it was likely she'd get dirty. At the sight of this, Jasmine clenched her fists and trembled, seemingly out of retorts. "What?" "What?" I replied, having not heard her clearly. This seemed to further upset Jasmine. "What? Are you trying to say that being wealthy makes you superior?" she yelled, pushing me hard on the shoulders. That was apparently the last straw. The other mothers who'd been keeping a watchful eye on the situation came outside and tried to calm Jasmine down. Jasmine kept shouting, "She lied to me! There's no way she lives in this luxury apartment! She's just lying to be more popular than me!" Ignoring the calming words of her friends, she continued to yell. After a while, perhaps exhausted from the constant shouting, Jasmine finally quieted down, catching her breath in heavy gasps. It was quite a sight. Her hair disheveled, one slipper missing, and all around her the aftermath of her tantrum. The hallway was littered with the objects she had thrown. Toys were broken from the impact, stuffed animals lay lifeless. She must have been grabbing anything she could get her hands on, meaning the inside of the house must be a mess too. From the inside of the house, I could see our children peeking out, worried. "Are you satisfied now?" I asked, flashing my best faux smile at Jasmine, who seemed unable to retort. Her face twisted amusingly at the sight. "I hope you enjoy the luxury apartment brag party," I said, gliding past her, "and please do clean up the mess that you made." From behind me, I heard her shout, "Liar!" It was just bravado, but it did give me a chuckle. As a result of this incident, Jasmine found herself distanced from the other close-knit mothers she knew. It seemed that her usually high-handed behavior had been a point of contention for some time. She even had the gall to make the other mothers clean up her mess. Her outrageous tantrum this time around was the last straw, painting her as an unstable individual in their eyes. The friends Jasmine thought she had amongst the mothers distanced themselves from her, and she found herself isolated in the preschool community. It was a pitiful sight to behold. To add insult to injury, rumors began to circulate that Jasmine had gotten a divorce. It was said that she was living lavishly off her husband's money, jet-setting on international trips and splurging on designer brands. This issue was the straw that broke the camel's back, as it was said that her spouse's affection and interest in her had already been waning. The incident where Jasmine threw objects at me and refused to clean up her mess was the final blow that pushed her husband over the edge. Jasmine reportedly pleaded, "Please, don't leave me." But her husband responded, "I never thought you would stoop this low. I can't stay with you anymore. I'm going to take custody of our child." And just like that, Jasmine was left all alone. Their marriage had been a secret affair where the two had eloped to a distant land. Hence, Jasmine had no one around her to lend a helping hand. Jobless Jasmine, having lost her means of living, was in a tough spot. Word of her fall from grace spread quickly through the grapevine, and finding employment was a struggle. Eventually, Jasmine managed to find work as a part-timer in a supermarket, and was said to be living in a run-down 50-year-old apartment with doors that creaked and groaned. It was reported that she was barely scraping by. After all that's happened, I sincerely hope Jasmine has learned her lesson and will no longer judge people based on their wealth.
"It's just a cold, right? You'll be fine if you sleep it off, haha."
I couldn't believe what my husband just said. He was planning to leave me running a high fever and our young daughter to attend a friend's wedding overseas, and off he went, genuinely excited about his trip. But little did he know, a surprising twist awaited him. I am Allison, a 35-year-old stay-at-home mom. I live with my husband David and our 5-year-old daughter, Misty. Misty loves reading picture books. She's a sweet, kind-hearted girl who laughs a lot, my pride and joy. David has many friends and is well-versed in various hobbies. His stories were always entertaining. He was a man I was proud to be with. I believed that marrying someone as wonderful as David would lead to a happy marriage. And it was blissful in the beginning. Our newlywed life was sweet and we were blessed with a child fairly quickly. I quit my job when I got pregnant, as per David's request. I gave birth to Misty without any issues. That's when things changed. He changed drastically. After the birth, David started calling me fat because I couldn't lose the baby weight. He would say,
"You're not attractive anymore. Make an effort to lose some weight."
Struggling with first-time parenting, I was also criticized for not keeping up with household chores. I did ask David for help, but he yelled,
"Don't be lazy. You eat, but can't even handle chores or childcare? Unbelievable."
David seemed to resent that his time was being consumed by household duties and childcare. I was shocked to discover this selfish side of him, especially after he was so happy about the pregnancy. If I ever asked David for help, he would complain to neighbors and relatives that I was neglecting my duties, making me feel ashamed. I became hesitant to confront David. I was afraid he would spread more false stories about me. But the biggest issue was money. When it was just the two of us, we both contributed to a joint account and spent the rest freely. After Misty was born, David took over the finances since I had no income, but he hardly gave any money for living expenses. He once told me to manage on just $300 for the three of us. Stress, I couldn't produce enough breast milk, so Misty was on formula. Between formula and diapers, $300 was nowhere near enough. When I tried to save by cooking budget meals, David would get furious, saying,
"Don't serve me this cheap-smelling food."
I even suggested getting a job to help out, but David looked down on me saying,
"You can't even handle housework, let alone work and raise a child. You're planning to slack off and make me do everything, aren't you? Just manage with the money I give you."
David was absolutely against me working, perhaps fearing it would add to his household responsibilities. Now that Misty is 5, David seems to have lost interest in her. He often ignores her when she tries to talk to him, preferring to play with his phone instead. I thought marrying David would lead to a happy family, but I was completely wrong. Seeing Misty downcast because David ignores her and won't play with her breaks my heart. Then one day I discovered that David had used the money we had been saving for Misty's education. I'm not working, and I think we are barely making ends meet each month. David is supposed to be managing our finances, but he won't tell me how much we are saving. Maybe we are not saving at all and running a deficit each month? That might be why he dipped into the education fund. When I asked David about it, he refused to disclose what he had spent the money on. Finally, he snapped,
"I earned this money now, so how I spend it is my business. You and Misty eat because of me, so stop complaining."
I tried to discuss the money issue multiple times, but David wouldn't budge. Our conversations went nowhere. Then, David dropped a bombshell.
"A friend invited me to their wedding overseas."
I couldn't believe my ears. Even if his friends cover some travel expenses, going overseas would still cost a fair amount. We are in a situation where we can't even afford Misty's education, and how can we afford an overseas trip? I tried to discuss this, but David ignored me and started preparing for the trip. Honestly, I considered divorce, but thinking of Misty held me back. She only has one father, and I couldn't bring myself to take that away from her. The day before David's departure arrived, and I was stuck with a high fever. I hadn't had a fever in a long time, and this might be the first time as an adult. Headaches, nausea, dizziness, and body aches clouded my consciousness. "Can you please skip the wedding? I'm really struggling with this fever," I asked weakly. David laughed and said,
"You'll be fine if you sleep it off."
He even added,
"Stop being so needy. Handle it yourself. You can't even manage yourself and you are not even working."
"Could you at least get some food for Misty? She hasn't eaten properly since yesterday," I pleaded. David sighed heavily and said,
"I don't have time for that and I don't want to catch anything. I'm staying in a hotel tonight."
And he really did leave us to attend the overseas wedding. At that moment, suffering from a high fever, I made up my mind. For Misty's sake, I had to let go of such a selfish man like David. 5 days later, David returned in high spirits.
"I'm back. Why are Dad and Mom here?"
David's parents are in the living room. My parents-in-law don't answer.
"What's going on? Where's Allison?"
It was Misty who answered David's question. "Mom is in heaven now."
"What? What are you talking about?"
David, thinking Misty was joking, burst into laughter. His parents shook their heads in disbelief.
"What a foolish thing you've done."
"It's too late for anything now." David looked bewildered, not understanding the meaning of their words.
"Wait, did Allison really die from that high fever?"
Muttering this, David watched as his parents left the house with Misty. Misty waved at her father. "Bye-bye." David, as usual, ignored her. His parents had got in the car. That was the plan. My parents and I were quietly waiting in the kids' room. I had my phone connected to my in-laws and was watching the living room through a hidden camera on my computer. My sister, who was waiting nearby, would pick up Misty, since there were things we didn't want her to hear. Only my in-laws remained in the car. While David was overseas, I had told both sets of parents about his terrible behavior. I wanted to divorce David, but I knew he would refuse to pay alimony or child support. So I wanted them to know the truth to help with the divorce. I told Misty she might not see David again, and because she said she wanted to see him one last time, I had the in-laws stay in the living room. Misty didn't object to not seeing her father again. She might have understood, even at her young age, that her father was treating her poorly. I had to prioritize Misty's care from now on. I wondered how David would react to Misty's words that Mom is in heaven. Would he reflect on his actions or apologize in tears? I continued to watch the hidden camera in silence, but then David did something unexpected. He suddenly started making a phone call. His voice was elated.
Brianna, I don't know the details yet, but it seems my wife is dead. Finally, the obstacle is gone. I should get the insurance money. Let the old folks raise Misty. Let's live together. You're the only one I love, Brianna.
We realized then that David had been having an affair, and he considered me and our child obstacles, planning to use the insurance money to remarry this woman. My parents, who were watching the hidden camera footage with me, were also furious. Since I was on the phone with my in-laws, they had heard David's voice too. They were also angry at David. I signaled to my parents and my in-laws, and we all moved to the living room where David was. Seeing this, David hung up the phone in shock.
Wait, Allison, but I thought you were in heaven.
I couldn't help but laugh at David's stupidity. Heaven is what Misty calls her room. It was sky blue sheets and white pillows. You wouldn't know because you never talked to her.
Wait, is that so? I thought... No, never mind.
David, not realizing we had heard his phone call, tried to cover up his tracks. But it was too late. Stop making excuses. We have been watching you on a hidden camera. You left your family with high fevers to go to a wedding, and you have been having an affair?
No, that's not true. I haven't been...
I cut him off. No more excuses. The decision is made. We are getting a divorce, and I'll be seeking alimony and child support, so be prepared. After I spoke, my father-in-law yelled, his face red with anger.
If you get divorced, never show your face here again. You're no longer our son.
Right after that, David's cell phone rang, filling the room with his ringtone. David didn't move, so I grabbed his phone to check. The caller was Brianna, David's mistress. I answered the call and put it on speaker so everyone could hear. Hello? What was that call about earlier? Living together is a joke, right? I have a fiance, so stop getting the wrong idea. I can't be with a delusional man. Don't contact me again. With that, she hung up. David, now dumped by his mistress too, turned pale and groveled at my feet begging for forgiveness.
I'm sorry. Please forgive me. If my family disowns me, you're the only one I can rely on. Plus, I can't afford to pay alimony or anything like that. I've already spent so much on Brianna during this trip.
David started rambling, even though no one asked him to explain. I glared at him. So you didn't go to a wedding? You abandoned your family for a romantic getaway?
Well, you see.
David couldn't find the words to defend himself. To think he was foolish enough to abandon his family and ruin himself by confessing an affair? I wondered why I ever married such an idiot. I should have decided to divorce him much sooner. Watching David continue to make a fool of himself, I resolved to move on with my life. Just Misty and me. Later, I checked David's phone and found numerous photos and videos from his trip with his mistress. The story about attending a friend's wedding was clearly a lie. I took this evidence to a lawyer. I formally filed for divorce, seeking compensation and child support. The lawyer visited Brianna, who apparently works at a nightclub, to verify the amount David had spent on her. She claimed she was just entertaining an old man as part of her job, but David foolishly insisted they were in love, causing a big fuss. It became clear that David had been financially supporting Brianna. That's probably why he had been giving me so little for living expenses and even dipping into Misty's college fund. David's life became miserable, burdened with debt from his lavish spending and now additional compensation. It also turned out that he lost his standing at his company when his affair and romantic trips came to light. Apparently, the nightclub where Brianna works is a popular spot for David's colleagues, so David confronted Brianna, causing a scene. Some of David's co-workers were there and word of the affair spread throughout the company. I guess he confronted her because he didn't know she was engaged, but I can't be sure. It's pathetic how he let a young woman manipulate him. This incident led to David becoming isolated at work. He really is a hopeless case. I heard David got demoted and took a significant pay cut. The lawyer who helped me with the divorce and alimony also updated me on Brianna's situation. It seems she met a grim end too. Her fiancé, a regular at the club, found out about her affair with David and called off their engagement. He even demanded compensation for the wedding expenses they had already incurred. Struggling to pay the hefty sum, Brianna tried to swindle money from other customers, but of course, you can't keep something like that a secret. As expected, the club found out and fired her. Now, Brianna is working multiple part-time jobs to pay off her debts, living alone in a cramped apartment. As for me, I moved back home and am living with my parents and Misty. I'm relieved to be away from the neighbors who believed the rumors and lies David spread about me. Life is much more relaxed now. My parents dote on Misty, who seems happier than when she lived with David. David has come to my parents' house a few times, begging for another chance, but my dad has been turning him away. Neither Misty nor I have any desire to see him. If Misty ever says she wants to see him, I'll consider it, but for now, she doesn't want to meet her father. I have no intention of reconciling with David, so there's no reason to talk to him. If he becomes too persistent, I'm considering involving the police. Looking at where David and his mistress Brianna are now, I realize how scary affairs can be. They have lost everything and are forced to live a bottom-tier life. It's their own fault. From now on, I want to focus on cherishing the happiness I have with my parents and Misty and forget about David.
My name is Myra. I reconnected with Corey, my current partner, at a high school reunion. Back in high school, we just knew each other's names and faces. But we hit it off at the reunion after sitting next to each other and started dating soon after. Corey proposed to me recently, so we're getting married. I had met my future in-laws, father-in-law, and mother-in-law a few times since Corey and I started dating. The only person I hadn't met was Corey's sister, Kristen. While father-in-law and mother-in-law always welcomed me warmly, Kristen would never come out of her room, and it's been bothering me. What does Kristen think of me?
Don't worry about her. She's just shy.
On the day of the family meeting, Corey tried to calm my nerves by saying that Kristen was just shy. I felt relieved hearing Corey's words, but we soon discovered that the assumption she's just shy was a major mistake. We're so happy that you're going to be Corey's wife.
Corey, you've really stepped up. Make sure you make Myra happy. I will.
Both father-in-law and mother-in-law were thrilled when we told them we're getting married. Just need to tell Kristen too, mother-in-law said, leaving her seat. As Corey, father-in-law, and I were chatting, a loud voice came from Kristen's room.
What?
Startled, we heard the sound of a door slamming. Kristen stormed into the room and glared at me.
I will never accept this marriage.
As I stood there shocked, mother-in-law followed Kristen, saying,
Hold on, Kristen.
But Kristen didn't stop.
Marriage is disgusting. Just the thought of having strangers in the house is bad enough, but getting married? Seriously, no way. That's just gross.
Kristen!
Father-in-law raised his voice in anger. but Kristen ignored him, scanning me from head to toe. Then, crossing her arms, she snorted.
Corey's taste in women is just awful. Why on earth would he marry someone as unattractive as you? Just thinking about what the kids would look like sends shivers down my spine. Can Corey even handle raising a child like this?
Of course he can. What are you even saying, sis?
Anyway, I'm against this marriage. I don't want her in our family. Don't you dare show your face here ever again.
At Kristen's outburst, Corey and his parents scramble in panic.
Stop it!
They all try to silence Kristen, their voices seeming to echo from far away. Gathering myself, I stood up and said something I never thought I would say. Fine. I won't ever come back to this house.
Myra, I'm sorry for my sister. I want to marry you.
Yeah, I still want to marry Corey. We will get married, but I will never come to this house again, and I will never see Kristen for the rest of my life. This discussion is over.
I said I don't want you to get married.
Ignoring Kristen's yelling, I started to prepare to leave. As I was leaving, I looked at Kristen and said, I don't need your approval for the marriage. Corey's parents' blessing is more than enough, rest assured. Since we'll never meet again, there won't be any awkward family get-togethers. No matter how much you object, I won't give up marrying Corey. Goodbye. I'll never forget what you've said to me. Keeping a straight face, I bid my goodbyes to my shocked in-laws and left. I hurried home, with Corey frantically following behind, apologizing with a near-teary face. Truth be told, I was really hurt by Kristen's words. Once we were out of sight of his parents and Kristen, tears started to flow as Corey apologized to me. It's really sad that your sister won't accept our marriage and that I can never return to that house. But I still want to marry you, Corey. I'm sorry I'm not the woman Kristen thinks I should be. Holding back tears and with a trembling voice, I got hugged by Corey, who told me,
You've done nothing wrong, Myra.
Feeling his warmth, I reaffirmed my commitment to marrying Corey. As I had declared, Corey and I got married and started our life together. We had a wedding, and both of us agreed not to invite Kristen. Corey's parents repeatedly apologized for Kristen's behavior, but our relationship with them remained good. Blessed by the family, except Kristen, Corey and I started our married life. However, Kristen was furious when she found out we got married. She yelled at Corey over the phone on our wedding night.
Why did you marry such an awful woman? This is the worst.
Corey eventually just put his phone aside. Fed up with the noise, he finally said,
Just leave us alone,
in a tired voice as he hung up. Since then, our marriage has been problem-free. Since I had declared that I wouldn't visit my in-laws, I haven't been to their place since that day. Instead, my in-laws, concerned about our lives, have been visiting us occasionally. Whenever they visited, they apologized for Kristen's behavior, to which I would reply, It's okay. I'm happy I married Corey. Looking back, I think it's a good thing we've cut ties with Kristen, who is quite a handful. If we hadn't, I shudder to think we'd still be hearing complaints from her. Then, just a few months into our marriage, I became pregnant. Corey was ecstatic. Even before we knew the baby's gender, he'd already started buying baby clothes and reading fatherhood books. I was feeling really happy. Then one day, I received a call from an unknown number. Though skeptical, I thought it might be from the maternity clinic or the local government office, so I answered. And I heard a voice I didn't want to hear.
Myra? Long time no see. It's your sister-in-law, Kristen.
Why is Kristen calling me now? Especially after she so adamantly rejected me becoming part of the family. Confused, I muttered, "Why?" And Kristen filled me in.
I found your number in Mom's phone.
Kristen informed me.
Corey has blocked me, so I thought I'd tell you.
Tell me what? Speaking in a much gentler tone than I remember, Kristen dropped a bombshell.
I'm getting married to Ronald, a classmate of you and Corey.
Ronald was indeed our high school classmate. According to Kristen, they started dating through a work connection, which happened to be Ronald. Both Kristen and Ronald work locally, so it's not surprising they'd cross paths. But I couldn't hide my shock that Kristen, who had been so against marriage, was now planning to tie the knot.
You're getting married? You, Kristen? Yes. Why the surprise tone? It's rude. Ronald will be at the next family meeting, so you both should come. It'll be weird if you weren't there.
Okay. Had Kristen forgotten everything she had said and done? She had yelled at me, humiliated Corey and her parents, and never once apologized. I felt the back of my head heat up with anger. We'll be looking forward to it, I said, keeping my cool.
Just so you know, don't mess this up. If you ruin my marriage with Ronald, you won't get away with it.
After being told off by Kristen, I stood in front of the calendar. I circled the date Ronald told us he'd be coming for a family meeting at my in-laws. I waited for that day with bated breath. Days passed, and finally the day Ronald was set to visit arrived. Corey and I dressed up nicely and left our house to greet him. When we reached the front of my in-laws' property, it seemed Ronald had just arrived. Seeing Ronald and Kristen waving at us from their car, Corey and I smiled back.
It's been a while since the wedding. Myra and Corey, how have you been? We've been good, Ronald. Myra's expecting, actually. Really? Congratulations.
Ronald greeted me with his familiar, warm smile from high school. He leaned in towards the baby bump and said,
Can't wait for you to join us, little one.
Thank you, I replied. Standing next to Ronald, Kristen walks onto the property of her in-laws and gently says,
Let's go.
No, I responded with a smile. I'm not allowed inside the house anymore. So, Ronald, I'm sorry, but I'll have to consider this family meeting over.
Huh?
Kristen's face flushed with rage while Ronald looked puzzled. Realizing Ronald was clueless, I decided to clarify. When Corey and I came to introduce ourselves as a couple, Kristen opposed us. She said that we were not welcome, that our union was disgusting, and that we should never come back. We married despite her, and that's why she didn't come to our wedding.
What? Kristen told me she was sick during the wedding.
That's not true. Myra, what are you talking about? Stop lying.
Trying to suppress her anger, Kristen spouts lies. I can't help but chuckle. I mean, come on, Kristen. You've got amnesia or something? You've made fun of me countless times. You even told me to my face that I'm ugly. You said that the baby I'm expecting will have my face. And you questioned if Corey could raise such a child. Forgotten all that?
Ronald, everything Myra is saying is a complete lie. What are you talking about, Myra? Stop saying stupid stuff.
Kristen, just so you don't forget, let me remind you. I will never enter this house, and I will never forget what you've said to me. Kristen looks at me with cold eyes and forcibly grabs my hand.
Enough of this nonsense. Even Ronald is losing patience. Let's get inside.
Corey and Ronald release my hand from Kristen's forceful grip.
Ronald?
Kristen falls flat on her butt, looking dazed. Her pretty dress is now soiled with dirt. Ronald doesn't offer her a hand and just looks down at her.
Is what Myra's saying true?
It's a lie. All lies. Myra has a problem with making stuff up, right, Corey?
Kristen almost threatens with her tone, but Corey sighs.
Sis, you're embarrassing yourself. What Myra is saying is true. If you're thinking of marrying Ronald, you better acknowledge this aspect of yourself.
Upon hearing Corey's words, Ronald pauses for a moment and then starts walking towards the car.
Wait! Ronald!
Kristen chases after Ronald in her dirt-covered dress, but he won't let her into the car.
I may be overstepping by intervening in my brother's marriage, but I can't consider marrying someone who insults not just me, but even a child who isn't yet born. No offense to the family, but I'll be going home today. We'll talk some other time.
Don't say that! Please, Ronald!
Corey, Myra, thanks for letting me know about Kristen before we got married.
Ronald thanked us and drove away.
Wait up!
Kristen chased after the car, crying. Along the way, she stumbled and fell, continuing to cry. You'd think her own brother Corey would go to help, but instead, he takes my hand.
Let's go. I can't let someone who yanks a pregnant woman's hand around be in the same space as Myra.
As we walk back home, Kristen's cries linger for a while. After we get home, Corey contacts his parents-in-law. After being told to say our greetings, we stood at the front of the property and spilled the beans about the past. This led Corey to explain that Kristen and Ronald's engagement had probably fallen apart. My in-laws responded by saying, "It couldn't be helped." When they visited us later, I apologized for what I had done to Kristen, even if it was out of revenge. They told me,
Don't worry. What she did was true.
according to my in-laws, Kristen had been shutting herself in her room ever since the engagement broke off. Ronald has a stable government job, and Kristen, who had thought she'd be living a stable life too, quit her job early on and is now unemployed. I heard she sneaks into the kitchen late at night to grab a meal as if she's stealing it, then goes back to her room, avoiding any contact with her parents. But Kristen is unpredictable. Both Corey and I have blocked Kristen's phone number. We moved to a bigger house since we have a baby on the way, and specifically asked my in-laws not to share our new address with Kristen. It seems like our decision was the right one. After we moved, Kristen went to our old place and began to bang and kick the front door, shouting,
Open up!
Because of her loud ruckus, a neighbor ended up reporting her to the police. It seemed like the in-laws were at their wits' end dealing with Kristen, and after she caused some legal trouble, they kicked her out of their home. Regretting that they had spoiled Kristen, they gave her enough money to live on her own for a while. Since then, I've heard Kristen has been making ends meet in a small apartment with a part-time job. As for Corey and me, we welcomed a healthy, beautiful baby into the world. Just like Kristen said, our baby did look like me, and it was a very adorable little girl. Looking back at when Kristen opposed our marriage, I'm convinced that my unwavering decision to marry was the right one. Thanks to the courage I had back then to stand up to Kristen, I am now enjoying a happy life with a loving husband and a cute daughter.
Family trips are more enjoyable without the daughter-in-law. She's just in the way. From the window of the speeding car, my mother-in-law looked down on me with a mocking smile. It all started on the first day of a family vacation with my husband's family. On the way to a luxury hotel, we stopped at a highway gas station, and suddenly I was left behind all alone. I was completely lost and stood frozen on the spot, a moment I'll never forget. My name is Susan. I'm 30 years old, and I focus on housework, not working outside the home. My husband, Thomas, is a management consultant and often away from home. Since I spend a lot of time alone and my husband has been covering all of mother-in-law's living expenses since my father-in-law passed away, we decided to live with her in our home. Mother-in-law was thrilled that her only son was moving back home, but she seemed displeased that I, his wife, was coming along. I'm not glamorous and I have no interest in designer brands. I do a lot of water-related chores, so even with care, my hands get rough and I choose clothes that are easy to move in. To mother-in-law, I seemed like an embarrassing daughter-in-law to show others. Mother-in-law, Linda, has always been a show-off, obsessed with appearance and brands. She's long since spent her grandfather's inheritance and her savings, but she has no intention of changing her luxurious lifestyle, always begging my husband for more. My husband always firmly refused, saying, "I'm giving you living expenses, not money for luxuries." But mother-in-law never gave up, always causing trouble. Furthermore, my sister-in-law and her husband live nearby. Sister-in-law, Jessica, has the same character as her mother, always making snide remarks like, "Thomas could do better than a plain woman like you." She comes to our house every day, demanding meals, baths, and drinks, but never contributes money or helps with chores. "You're Thomas's wife, so it's only natural that you do all the housework. You're not good-looking, so at least keep the house clean. Thomas is too kind. Susan has always been poor and doesn't understand anything about brands, right?" Yet mother-in-law would tell my husband, "I do all the housework myself." And sister-in-law would claim, "We're good friends." I've been working in customer service, so I've been using that experience to avoid major conflicts with mother-in-law and sister-in-law for the past few years. But my husband noticed everything, from me doing all the housework to sister-in-law's terrible attitude, but he didn't confront them directly because I asked him not to. I wanted to avoid a complete breakdown with my husband's family, no matter what they did to me. My husband respected my feelings. "But you don't have to push yourself too hard. I'm okay with cutting ties and living separately." "Thank you, but I want to try a little harder. So I'm thinking of planning a family trip to improve our relationship. What do you think?" "That sounds good. I can take time off next month, so let's all go on this year's trip. Since we were dating, my husband and I have been traveling regularly. Even after moving in with my mother-in-law, my husband and I enjoy occasional trips just for the two of us. But once mother-in-law and my sister-in-law realized we were staying at luxury and famous hotels, they insisted on coming along. You two are so heartless, going on luxurious trips without us. From now on, take us with you and make sure it's extravagant. Because they were so persistent, I told them that this time we had booked a luxurious hotel for the whole family, including sister-in-law's husband. Mother-in-law and sister-in-law were thrilled. But just before the trip, my husband's work made it impossible for him to join us. I thought about postponing the trip, but mother-in-law had already bragged to the neighbors about the souvenirs, so she insisted we couldn't change the plans now. Reluctantly, I agreed to go with the four of us, excluding my husband. On the day, I put mother-in-law and sister-in-law's luggage in the trunk, and since there was no room left, I carried my travel bag inside the car. Throughout the drive, mother-in-law and sister-in-law kept making snide remarks from the back seat. Feeling fed up, I glanced at the empty passenger seat where only my travel bag sat, and I began to feel a little uneasy without my husband. Even as I drove onto the highway, mother-in-law's complaints never stopped. You're driving so slowly. Are you just careless because Thomas isn't here? Really? There was an accident today, so... You're just good at making excuses. You must have deceived Thomas the same way. I didn't deceive anyone. If only slow Susan weren't here, this trip would be more fun, right, Mom? Yes, indeed. Eventually, as we were about to arrive at yet another gas station, sister-in-law surprisingly suggested, "Let my husband drive the rest of the way. You must be tired, Susan." Having been forced to prepare mother-in-law's luggage and clean the house before our early departure, I was exhausted and agreed. "Susan, could you buy drinks for everyone?" As I got out of the car to switch drivers, mother-in-law gave me a friendly smile, unlike her usual self. Sure, that's fine. Mother-in-law and sister-in-law were unusually kind. Maybe they want to improve our relationship just like I do. That's good. I felt relieved and was about to walk away from the car when suddenly the engine started. And mother-in-law threw my luggage out of the car. Then mother-in-law yelled at me with a big smile. "Family trips are more enjoyable without the daughter-in-law. You're just in the way." I stood there, watching the car drive away, leaving me and my travel bag behind. I was completely lost and stood still for a moment. I will never forget the words mother-in-law said to me at that moment. Finally, I realized that no matter how much I did for mother-in-law and sister-in-law, it was all in vain. Reaching for my travel bag left in the parking space, my vision suddenly blurred. Surprised, I ran to the restroom, covering my eyes with a hand towel, and tears began to flow uncontrollably. I don't remember how long I was there, but I noticed a call on my mobile phone and checked the message. It was from my husband, who had finished work early, expressing concern about the trip with mother-in-law and the others. While I was reading the message, my husband called. "Thomas, I'm alone at a highway gas station right now." "What? What happened?" Hearing his voice, I couldn't help but cry again. He patiently listened to my explanation without rushing me. "I'm really sorry that Mom and the others did this to you. I'll come pick you up right away." "I'm sorry this happened." "Why are you apologizing, Susan?" "Because I wanted to get along with your precious family, and I couldn't." "I want you to tell me how you really feel. Do you still want to try to make things work with Mom and the others?" "Right now, I can only think that it's too difficult." "I see. I'm sorry for what my family did. I'll handle the separation and everything else with Mom and the others. But is it okay for you to leave your feelings as they are?" "My feelings?" "You've been holding back for me all this time, haven't you?" Thinking back, I realized that I had always been holding back. but I had been angry with my unreasonable mother-in-law and insensitive sister-in-law all this time. Yes, I can't be with those people. I absolutely hate it. Expressing the anger I had been suppressing felt surprisingly refreshing. You can do whatever you want from now on, Susan. I'll take care of the rest. I understand. No matter what happens, I won't let them anymore. I made that firm resolution. A few hours later, my husband came to pick me up at the gas station. Being with him made me naturally smile, and I realized how calmly and happily we could spend time together, even though we were traveling the same distance. I couldn't help but grin a little, even though I felt bad for my worried husband. Thanks to his thoughtful care, I was able to rest well when we got home. The next day, my husband made a surprising proposal. I've narrowed down the options for our new home to places near Susan's parents' house. What? What's going on all of a sudden? I want to make sure we're not bothered by Mom and the others, so let's finish moving during the 3 days of the trip. Will it be difficult for you to move, Susan? My careful and planned husband would never do something so sudden. I felt that he was quite angry inside, but he had a lovely smile for me. I'm all for moving. Let's get started right away. We quickly found a new home and moving company, and we were able to move without any problems. During this time, I received several emails from mother-in-law and the others. We're having the best trip without you. The hotel is luxurious and wonderful. Make sure it's at this level next time. Dinner was the most extravagant and delicious ever. It's even more fun without seeing Susan's ugly face. Traveling with just the family is so much more relaxing. The jacuzzi is amazing. Their enjoyment of the luxurious time at the high-end hotel came through clearly. Enjoy it while you can. I was looking forward to what would happen next. At around 10 a.m. on the checkout day, as expected, I received a call from mother-in-law. Susan, what's going on? What do you mean? They told me the accommodation fee is for $100,000 if the young lady isn't there. It's completely different from what you told us at first. It's only natural that the regular accommodation fee applies since I booked it through my connections and I'm not there. What do you mean? That hotel is run by my relatives. What? That's why we were able to stay at a special rate. Well, I didn't know that. By the way, all the hotels we've stayed at on our trips were run by those relatives, so we were able to stay at a discount. Susan, you've never told us that before. Thomas told me to keep quiet about it because if Linda and the others found out, they'd demand it be free. What's that? Anyway, the accommodation fee is correct, so please pay it yourself. Wait a minute, I can't pay $100,000. I didn't go on the trip, so I can't pay for you all. Don't say that, do something, we're family, right? You said the wife of your son isn't family, didn't you? You all enjoyed yourselves as a family, so please pay as a family. Goodbye. I ignored mother-in-law, who was still yelling on the other end of the phone, and hung up, feeling refreshed. In the end, mother-in-law and the others borrowed money from a shady source to pay for the accommodation or something like that. Furthermore, when they returned home, they couldn't get living expenses from my husband or me since we had moved, and they ended up fighting and parting ways with sister-in-law's family. Sister-in-law's family also deteriorated their relationship and divorced. Sister-in-law, abandoned by her husband and without income, looked for work in the nightlife, but seemed to have trouble finding employment due to her bad personality. With no one left to rely on, mother-in-law even went to my husband's company to seek help. At that time, mother-in-law looked older than her age, with hollow eyes, a haggard face, and dirty clothes. Even when she was crying and begging in the company lobby to live with us, my husband firmly declared a break in relations. After that, mother-in-law ended up working exhaustively at a terrible live-in job. Several years have passed, and now we have a lovely child and are living very happily. We are planning to stay at that luxury hotel we couldn't go to before, just the three of us, as a family. The hotel owner's relative invited us because they want to meet our child. We are looking forward to it very much.
Wouldn't it have been embarrassing to have a painting like that on the front porch? My daughter-in-law Macy, who had sold my prized painting on a flea market app without my permission, stated flatly. My mother had done a colored pencil drawing of Gerberas for me from her hospital bed before she died. That drawing was a memento of my late mother. I know, but I can't hang an amateur drawing because it's too shabby. Do you think you should talk to me like that, even though you are my daughter-in-law? I said boldly, but Macy was unfazed. She drew her arms across her chest and stared at me. Please consider your position. We will be taking care of you in the future, right? It's that deciding line again. So you're allowed to sell my belongings without my permission? I'm your one and only son's wife. Think about how much we are going to take care of you. Macy gave me one more look before walking out the door, her luxury brand shoes clacking. I'd be moving into a new house alone the next day. Macy knew this and sold the painting to harass me. Henry, my son, and Macy, my daughter-in-law, had sold my belongings without my permission before. I was furious but resigned to the fact that I would never get them back. But I'll never forgive her for selling my mother's mementos. Both Macy and Henry, who was always at her disposal, irritate me. I'll completely cut ties from my son and wife when I move into my new house tomorrow. My husband, son, and wife can live in this old house. I am Amy, a 50-year-old housewife. For years, I did all of the housework while working part-time at a factory. I look after my family, which includes my husband, my only son, and as of 3 years ago, my daughter-in-law, Macy. My mother, who raised me as a single mother, died 6 months ago. She left me a large sum of money from her life insurance policy. I took advantage of the opportunity to purchase a small, new house and decided to divorce my husband, with whom I had a strained relationship. The day before I moved in, Macy sold my mother's painting without my permission. When I told my husband we were splitting up, he simply said, "Do whatever you want." During our many years as a couple, our relationship had cooled. I believe neither of us did anything wrong and that what happened was unavoidable. My son and his wife, who lived with us, were the ones who were against my leaving. Who will do the housework if you leave? Aren't you a housewife? I am a civil servant like Henry, so I am not like you who only works part-time. It's appalling to hear a mother throw her family out of the house. My son and his wife both continued to complain as I was packing. First and foremost, why are you buying a house now? It's the money my mother left me, and it's up to me what I do with it. When the insurance money arrives, you should put it to good use for your family. A house where you'll live alone is a squandering of money. She's right. You should have shared grandmother's insurance money with us. Henry's wife was a brand-obsessed woman who never washes a single pair of underwear and is constantly taking dance, yoga, English conversation, and other classes. My son, who is at her beck and call, blames me all at the same time. This was enough for me. My friend Jane, who lives near my new house, invited me over the night I moved in to join her for dinner. My husband is out drinking today too, so I thought it would be perfect. Thank you very much. I still haven't unpacked anything. Jane's house is magnificent. She and her husband both love dogs, so they built a house to accommodate a large dog. In fact, 3 Dobermans are currently resting quietly in the living room's corner. I told Jane about Henry and Macy while eating a hamburger she had prepared for me. What's the deal with your daughter-in-law? And I'm sorry, but your son is also pitiful. Henry used to be a stronger person, but now he's at the mercy of his wife. I'm tired of it. One of the large dogs approached me and nuzzled my feet, as if to console me. It was Hannah, the female of the 3 Dobermans. Hannah is much gentler than my son. All of our dogs are smart and good. Jane used to be a trainer because she's so good with dogs. Her 3 new dogs are large and scary in appearance, but are really gentle and extremely intelligent. They would never attack anyone, but they will bark at uninvited guests if Jane instructs them to. I wish I had a dog as gentle as Hannah is. Why don't you get yourself one? I'll train it for you. Indeed, I am free to do whatever I want as of today. In a new house, you begin a new life. Isn't that right? I thought so too. Macy and I are moving to my parents' house next month. At the end of the month, my son called me with this news. I'd just gotten used to living alone and was starting to enjoy my independence. Your parents' house? Oh, you're moving to Macy's parents' house? No, it's my mother's house. My home? You already live at your father's house. I wasn't sure what he was saying. I talked with Macy. After all, my parents' house is my mother's house, not my father's, and we decided to move to your house. No, my house isn't big enough for the 3 of us. I was not going to put up with Henry and Macy bossing me around and making me do all of the housework. But one of the rooms does have a place to sleep. You can sleep in the living room corner, and we can use that space as our bedroom. Don't be ridiculous. What are you talking about? You want me to sleep in the living room corner? I could feel my face getting hot with rage. We're coming even if you don't like it. I'll start by shipping you a couple of boxes. I'm not going to accept them. Well, then I'll think of something. Anyway, I'm coming, so please, look after me, Henry said, and abruptly hung up the phone. I don't want this. I despise the idea of Henry and Macy bossing me around and forcing me to do all the housework. That is something I will not allow to happen. The next day, Jane and I went to a family restaurant. I wanted her to listen to my story. I'm sorry, but you have the worst son and daughter-in-law. As she sipped her latte, Jane continued, You must not accept it under any circumstances. You must politely say no. Well, since it is those 2, they might hire a moving company. I don't know what to do. To wash down my pitiful feelings, I drank a sip of jasmine tea. I enjoy this tea, but it is quite bitter. Well, it is difficult to say no when the movers will come. If we're not careful, we might get into trouble. We have to do something to make them not want to come to my house. I can't stand the way they're acting. Well, we could ask my children for help. What, Hannah and the dogs? Hannah, Sun, and Sky are Jane's 3 kids, her 3 beloved Dobermans. My dogs will bark, growl, and act out to some extent on command. I could ask them to scare them away or something. In fact, my son has been afraid of dogs since he was a child. It's difficult to live with a son and his wife who would sell their mother's mementos without permission. So let's come up with something. I agree. Thank you very much, Jane. I felt a little relieved as a result of our conversation. When I returned home, I discovered that my son and his wife were serious. 2 large cardboard boxes had been stacked in front of the front door. These are Henry's and my possessions. We thought you would refuse the courier, so I brought them. We will move in next month, so please keep them in the house. Macy. My shoulders slumped as I read the note attached to the cardboard box. I had no choice but to bring the box inside, and when I opened it, I discovered many of their personal belongings. Henry's imported watches and leather jackets. Macy's designer bags, clothes, and shoes. They must have left behind valuable items I would not discard without permission. What a dirty move. How little they must think of me to sell off my mother's paintings or leave this luggage without my permission. Well, we could ask my children for help. Jane's voice from the family restaurant came to mind. I've occasionally accompanied Jane on dog walks since I settled in after the move. She invites me to accompany her for a change of scenery. She's a great friend to have. It means a lot to me. Why don't you sell their belongings? Macy would sell them on her own, wouldn't she? Yes, even the memento my mother painted. Moon, a male dog, looks at me from the end of the leash I am holding. By the way, why do your son and wife want to live with you? They're both government employees and have money, so why don't they just live together? They don't like doing housework, especially Macy because she's always learning, going out to play, or watching fashion and makeup videos. So you've been doing all the housework by yourself? Yes, my husband never did it, and Henry works overtime and travels a lot, and Macy is the same way. I recall hearing a conversation between my son and his wife on the day I announced my departure from our home. If you leave the house, who will do the housework? Well, you can. No, obviously not. I want your mother to do it. Jane sighed in disgust when I mentioned this. It wasn't until a week later that I received several phone calls from Macy. I finally answered in disgust after she phoned dozens of times. Your house is quite small, right? Yes, that's what I said. Henry said he saw you with 3 big dogs, and I wonder if 3 dogs like that could live in a small house. It struck me. Macy is obviously terrified of dogs. There are people all over the world who are terrified of dogs. One of them is Henry. Jane must have been with me when Henry saw her, but he must have been completely distracted by the dogs. I told you it's a small house. If you're worried, why don't you come back and take a look? I will. I want to check the inside of the house. Macy's voice unraveled a little. She decided that there was no dog in the house. Anyway, I'll be there this Sunday at 10 a.m., Macy said and hung up the phone. Okay. Unexpectedly, I can take my revenge now. On Sunday, Henry and Macy came to my house as planned. You really came? I said I would come. You know, it's because you bought the house on a whim that we're in this messy situation. That's really true. You should have stayed quiet and continued to do the housework like before. Complaining, they took off their shoes and entered the house. Okay, that's it. I opened the living room door, gloating in my mind. Whoa! Ah! The next moment, my son and his wife screamed in unison. There were 2 Dobermans, Moon and Sky, sitting there. What? Are you kidding me? Mother, this dog. These are my dogs. Aren't they cute? Jane, the dog trainer over there, found them for me. Jane, who was sitting on the sofa, stood up and smiled at me. They are so cute because they are well trained. Moon, Sky, how do you say hello to our guests? The dogs barked at the same time. Macy said, "Oh no!" Macy sat down with her head in her hands. Is she that bad with dogs? Oh, they are so cute. Don't worry, Moon, Sky, play with them. At the sound of Jane's voice, the 2 dogs ran over to Henry and Macy, respectively. They raised their paws, wagging their tails as if to say, "Let's play." Stop! Oh no, I'm scared! Macy shook her head and began to wriggle and shake. Moon just invited her to play with him, but Macy doesn't understand. I'm scared of dogs. Macy just lost it and burst into tears, snot running out of her nose. Oh dear, if you're going to live in my house, you'll have to get along with these kids too. Make them stop! This ruined the makeup she had studied on YouTube and was so proud of. Her mascara was running and the lame from her eyeshadow spread to her cheeks. Her tears and runny nose made the high-end foundation look soggy. With this face, she was going to take the train home. "Hey, Mom, do something about it." Meanwhile, Henry, who had been jostled by the much larger Sky, fell on his backside and began to scoot away. Sky, thinking that he was playing, happily jumped on Henry. "No, stop it. The dog is too big and scary." I suddenly looked at Henry's jeans and saw that the color of his crotch had darkened a bit. He was so afraid of the dog that he had peed himself. How pathetic. "Moon, Sky, come here." Jane decided it was time to stop and called the dogs. Immediately, the two dogs left Henry and Macy and returned to her. "Moon, Sky, down." With that one word, the dogs lay down at Jane's feet. They really are smart kids. Until now, even though I've been slaving away at my part-time job and housework, you've never helped me. Besides, when I said I was going to leave, you decided to live on your own. Do you think your mother is stupid? I spat out the words I had been holding back as my son and his wife stood up, crying. I left home because I was fed up with you. I am not your housekeeper. But doesn't that mean you have to? He's a well-trained and smart dog, and much gentler than you. Henry and Macy lacked their usual air of bravado. A husband with a wet crotch and a wife whose makeup is a mess. They make the perfect couple. You also sold off my precious things without my permission. I will never forgive you for selling my mother's painting. I said it at once and looked at Moon and Sky, who were meekly lying face down, before looking at my son and his wife again. This, a house with 2 dogs this big, is something we don't want. That's right, we'll give up moving. So give me back the stuff we left behind the other day, then we'll go home. They're still in the boxes in the next room. Take it and get out of here. As I pointed to the next room, Henry and Macy took a wide turn to avoid the dog before opening the door. And... whoa! Ah! They both screamed again and fell on their butts. That's right, because another Doberman, Hannah, was sitting right next to the boxes in the room. Mom, the boxes, please get them. I don't want to. You brought it yourself, so take it yourself. I peeked into the room and saw Hannah just sitting there with a calm expression on her face. I can't go near a dog like that. Then give up your stuff. You mean I should leave it? My bags and Henry's watches are in that box. You also got rid of my precious things without my permission, didn't you? I didn't ask you to leave them behind. I'm telling you, take it with you. Macy just glared at me for a moment. But then, perhaps remembering the dog's presence, she lowered her eyes with a sigh. Please, Mother, bring us the boxes. You and Macy have been making fun of me. You knew how important that painting that she sold off was to me, but you didn't stop her. Well, I'm sorry about that, but at that time, Jane came to me. Hannah, how do we greet our guests? Immediately, Hannah sat down and barked loudly. No! Stop it! Hearing Hannah's voice, the son and his wife must have reached their limit. With his wet jeans and her face covered in smudged makeup, they ran to the front door and got out of the house. After that, I sold all the personal belongings Henry and Macy had left behind to a pawn shop. I discovered that their belongings were of considerable luxury, with Henry's watch having a surprisingly high value and Macy's bag being of a particularly high class. The extravagance of these items left me in a state of dismay. Back at her house, Macy ended up being responsible for all the household chores. My former husband does not like Macy's housework. He constantly complains that the food is bad, the house is dirty, and the laundry is piled up. Macy can no longer go to her lessons because of her housework, and she has gained 10 kilograms due to the stress. And all of her frustration seems to be directed at Henry. Mom, I'm at my limit. Macy finally started hitting me. She's been fighting with Dad all the time. I want a divorce. One day, Henry called me, his voice exhausted. You chose your own wife, didn't you? You can take care of yourself. Of course, I would not give advice to Henry. I was sick and tired of being involved with that couple. Meanwhile, I bought a female Shiba Inu and asked Jane to train her. She's going to be a great dog. Jane smiled as she patted the head of the puppy I named Rio. Really, it's all thanks to you. I'm sorry for making the dogs play such an unpleasant role. That's okay. When I heard what you said, I was more upset than you were. But from now on, you and Rio can live together peacefully. Yes, from now on, I will enjoy my life and my time. With this determination in my heart, I gently picked up the puppy.